And we are live. What's going on YouTube Live? It's your boy Billy Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should already know what that means. It is time for your Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is don't take the journey for granted. As always, I like to explain what I mean by my topic. So, what do I mean by tonight's topic? Don't take the journey for granted. Well, it's really kind of simple. Um, what I mean is pay attention to life as you go through it. Sometimes in life, what happens is we have these experiences, some good, some bad, but we take them for granted. We don't give them the attention that they need, and we just kind of ignore them and just kind of move through life on autopilot. So when I say don't take the journey for granted, what I'm saying is pay attention, be attentive to the life that you're living because you only get to go through this journey one time. So, as always, I got three tools for you on the first row for how to not take the journey for granted. And so, I want to share those with you and let's get right into it. So, tool number one when it comes to not taking the journey for granted is listen to what is being taught. Man, again, as I said already, a lot of us go through life on autopilot, and some of us will go through it for on autopilot for longer periods than others. And what happens when we are in this autopilot mode, we kind of move aimlessly through life and then arrive at a location, and we really don't have a recollection of how we got there. So when you decide not to take the journey for granted, what you do is you start to listen and you start to be attentive and you start to notice trends, behaviors, habits that you may have either picked up along the way or put down and picked back up at a later time. You start to identify those habits. And as you identify those habits, what happens is you're able to kind of learn why they're coming to the surface or why they seem to be seasonal or I always struggle with this word. They come in cycles. And so when you start listening to what is being taught, what happens is instead of just kind of aimlessly arriving at your situation, you start to understand the steps that got you to the situation, which puts you in the position to be able to change where you're headed. And again, it's about listening to what's being taught, regardless of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether that's a difficult thing or an easy thing. I think sometimes what happens is we kind of get on this autopilot mode where um, things feel good or things are firing on all cylinders and things are going your way, we'll say it that way. Things are going your way. And then as things begin to go your way, you kind of pay less and less attention to the things that are kind of driving things in your way. And so what happens is we end up in this situation where once we arrive at our destination, because we didn't really look at why things were going our way, because we didn't look at what things were helping things go our way, we kind of don't know how to duplicate that process. And unfortunately, as with all journeys, they eventually come to an end. And life is really nothing but a bunch of journeys, one after another. So as one journey ends, the goal is to, I guess I should put my hands this way. As one journey ends right here, the goal is to take everything that you learned in that journey prior to this next journey beginning and apply the things that work that help you get to this point or a place that you want to be. If you find that you're in a place that you don't want to be, is take everything that you learned in this gap and say, okay, here's what could have kept me from being in this wrong place. I'm going to take that, but all that other stuff is bathwater, throwing that out. And so that's the very first tool is listening to what's being taught. It makes no sense to show up to class, take no notes and not listen. You're not going to pass any tests unless you're extremely bright and somehow you already know the information. But other than that, if you don't know the information, really every step in our journey in our lives is a step into the unknown. Today, before I got to today, I had never been here before. And before I go into tomorrow, or when I go in tomorrow, I will never have been there before. So it makes no sense to show up to class every day after day after day after day after day after day after day, and not take notes and not listen to the lecture that's being taught. Because what I tell people this all the time, I am a firm believer that until you learn the lessons that you're meant to learn between your levels, when they say level up, until you learn what you're supposed to learn in between in that interim, you're going to be on that level for a long time, going back through the same process over and over again until you learn it. So it's very important that in the first tool, you listen to what's being taught and then you begin to apply what's being taught. That's the other thing. You can listen all day long, but if you don't apply anything, then you'll find that, hey, I'm still in the same position whether I listen or not. So that's tool number one, listen to what's being taught. Tool number two, when it comes to not taking the journey for granted, is embrace all steps of the journey. And again, going back, some steps in the journey can be difficult, some steps in the journey can be easy. And what I have found in human behavior is when something is easy, when something doesn't require effort, we tend to take it for granted. Um, and what happens when we tend to take things for granted, especially easy things. I mean, you can just think of like a physical activity. If you're like playing basketball or you're just running track, you take your ability, your natural ability to be fast and run for granted. Well, what happens is because you take that for granted, maybe you don't stretch as much as you're supposed to stretch. Maybe you don't pay attention as much as you're supposed to pay attention, and you can cause yourself to become injured. So this is why it's important, regardless of where the step is, you embrace that step of the journey, if whether it's easy or difficult. Now, when things are difficult, there's a whole nother side of that pendulum. What happens is we become hypersensitive to the event, and it's like it's so hard. I just don't see myself overcoming. I don't see myself making progress. I don't, and we get into this negative space. And even in that negative space, there are things for us to learn. But if all we're focused on the net is on the negative, then we're going to miss out on those opportunities to actually engage with the things that we're supposed to be learning in that negative experience. And I really don't even want to call the experience negative. What I want to call the experience is that difficult experience. So whether the experience is difficult, whether the experience is easy, at all times embrace each step of your journey. So that way, when you're listening to what's being taught, you can then glean those lessons from that journey and you don't take any part of your journey for granted. Remember that tomorrow is going to be a new place that you have never been before. The day after that is going to be a new place that you have never been before. So embrace each step along the way because each step gives you an opportunity to learn something new. Um, and so that's tool number two, embrace the steps of the journey. Then we have tool number three. Tool number three is one of my favorite tools, I'm going to just say that way, is make space for company. And the reason this is my favorite tool is because in life, I feel like for myself personally, I have had struggles, I have had challenges, I have had successes, I've had failures. But the one thing that has been constant in my life is that I have had company, good company that has rocked with me from the beginnings of First Row to my lengthy Facebook posts to all these different things. I've had good company that has really like stuck with me and encouraged me to pursue things that I'm passionate about. And so the reason why making space for company is important when it comes to not taking the journey for granted is because number one, on a human level, our desire inherently, whether we're introverts, extroverts, antisocial, or super social, our desire inherently is to connect. This world would be a miserable place if I was the only person in the world. I couldn't imagine that world and wouldn't want to be in that world. So the reason why having company helps is because it helps us to connect. It helps us to um, establish that connection with humanity in general. But then what it also does in regards to not taking our journey for granted, it kind of gives us this insight to uh, how finite our journey actually is. So we're not here for an indefinite period of time. Even if it doesn't matter if you believe in reincarnation, no life after death, whatever it may be, the present that we are in, the space that we are in right now in the physical, that space is finite for us. At some point, we understand that it will come to an end. And because it will come to an end, what that means is that if we can engage with company and bring company along the way, then that means our journey, even when it comes to an end, we may have a couple of residuals that continue to resonate on after we're gone. And that is because what impact we have to people as we connect with them, as we bring company onto our journey, that will resonate in their journey that they're having, and that will increase our legacy that is going to be expanded into other people's lives because of our impact or because of our connection with our company. The other thing is that I think it's funny, like when we hear things like, "Oh, I'm a self-made man," or "I'm a self-made woman," or "I'm self-made." We hear these things, and it's like, "Oh man, that's really great that they were able to pull themselves up by themselves." Well, nobody wrote that your journey had to be this journey of journey that you took alone. So as great as it may be that you may be self-made, I'm going to be honest, I don't want to be self-made. I want to be community made. I want to be a byproduct of my community. And I don't mean the place that I grew up at. I don't mean the place that I came from. I mean the community of the people that I surround around, the people that I surround myself with. And that's the other and the last part about this tool about making space is that when you make space for people to join you on your journey, what you're going to find is the people that were meant to be on your journey with you are going to evolve with you, and they're going to be the people on those days when the journey is difficult, when the waves are crashing and the boat is sinking. They're going to be those people that are helping you bail out water on the boat. Those are going to be those people who are yelling you, "Come on, man, we can do this. Come on, we can do this. We can get this done." Those are going to be the people who act as your cheerleaders on the day when things get difficult. Those are going to be people that you can call when you feel like, "Hey, this journey might just need to come to an end." And I mean that, just to be very clear, I mean that like when you have depression and you have suicidal thoughts and you're like, "Man, difficulty, this adversity, these challenges are never going to end. They're never going to stop." These are the people that you're going to have in your corner that are going to say, "Hey, look, I'm here for you. We got this. We've been through difficulties before. We're probably going to go through difficulties again at some other point. But once we get to that difficulty, one thing we will know for certain is we will get through that just like we've gotten through the other ones." So those are the three tools that I have for the first row when it comes to not taking the journey for granted. The first tool being is listen to what's being taught. Again, doesn't make sense to show up every day to life, but not take the lessons that come with everyday life. Tool number two is embrace all steps of the journey. It does not matter what the difficulty level is of that step. Embrace that step and learn and glean what you can glean from that step. And then the third and final tool is make space for company. We were not designed to be alone. That is not the purpose of human connection. We were designed to interact, to embrace, and to engage with one another. So take that to heart when you're going through your journey. Engage with as many people as you can engage with, healthy people, but engage with people that you can engage with that are going to add to your journey and that are going to add to your influence and legacy. So with that, as always with the first row, I like to share a personal story that kind of got me thinking about this topic. And it's very funny because it's been a long journey to get to this point in the first row. And so I was thinking about how long I've been doing inspirational content. And it's been I think a little under 10 years that I've been doing inspirational content. It's probably over 10 years if you count like posts before I actually started intentionally doing inspirational content. But I was thinking about this journey, about um, how it started and where it originated from. And it originated from a very dark place in my life where things weren't going very well. The decisions I were making weren't the decisions I was making. They weren't serving me the life that I wanted. And I don't mean like the lifestyles of the rich and famous. I just mean like a life of happiness and not having depression all the time. The people that I would interact with from time to time would not be the best people or the people who have my best at heart. And I finally got to this place where I started listening to the lessons in my journey and had to start thinking like, what was the common denominator in the decisions and the outcomes that I was receiving? And really what it came down to, it was me. It was me not taking the lessons. I would make a decision, things would blow up and go all over the place. I'd be depressed, I'd be suicidal, I'd be all these things. And then all of a sudden it'd be like, once that cleared, I took none of the lessons from that. It's just like I threw it all away and started all over. And the cycle would continue over and over again until I finally became intentional about what part does Billy play in this? And that's when I started looking and listening to the steps in my journey. and not taking for granted that the fact that I simply made it through something just to start the cycle all over again. I made it through something and I had said, okay, what are the things that got me on track? And normally, what I was finding when things were getting blown up, the things that got me off track started in the very beginning. And then as I started to try to get back on track, I could see the things I started to do to try to get back on track. But by that time, it was too late and I couldn't swing all that inertia and all that momentum back towards positivity. The other aspect was when things were easy, I got complacent. I just said, things are going good. Money's coming in, bills are paid. I can go and do the things that I want to do. And I really didn't pay any attention to how that was taking place. And so there was really, regardless if things were going good or bad in my life, from an inspirational standpoint, there was no intentionality behind how my life was playing out. And so when I started thinking about this inspirational journey that I've been on, I started to look at like my Facebook timeline on the posts that I was posting. And I could see like this level of maturity step by step growing and growing and growing and growing and growing to where now I'm to the point that I'm able to have conversations with complete strangers, and am very comfortable and competent and confident in why I know what has worked for me and the potential of what I know that has worked for me, how that can work for them as they customize that to their journey. I'm not a one size fits all type person. So even as I give these tools for the first row, I realize that these are the tools that work for me, but it's up to the audience to determine how they want to customize those tools to work for them. If they want to customize those tools to work for them. And then the last thing that I found is that what I would do in the times of difficulty when things were blowing up before I became this inspirational presence online, was that I would always try to isolate myself whenever I experienced extreme difficulties. And the moment I would go into that isolation, what would end up happening is I would just replay the same stories of failing and being less than adequate and not enough and unworthy. And all these negative thoughts would just circle in my mind because it was just me alone. I had nobody there to say, hey, Billy, yeah, you made a mistake, but you're a good person. Hey, Billy, you might have a negative bank account balance, but you're a good worker and you're going to figure out how to earn income. I didn't have anybody like that because I would constantly work to isolate myself immediately. So that way it was just me and my negative thoughts. And I'm going to use negative in that particular context, not my difficult thoughts, my negative thoughts. And so overall, that story, what it taught me is that it's been a journey for me to get from point A, on and off depression, on and off rage, on and off all these negative, difficult situations to get to a place to where I have a strong enough foundation to where I don't have to fall back into that cycle of aimlessly living my life. And so because I no longer take my journey that I have taken throughout the 40 years of my life for granted, now I'm in a position to where I'm able to not only keep myself at a pretty good level when it comes to inspiration and encouragement for self encouragement, I'm also at a place to where I can reach back and help others up to the same level that I'm at and help boost them up beyond. So that's what I got for you guys today. I hope you guys have enjoyed the Wednesday Word. I do have the next upcoming show for the Wednesday Word on December 15th, which is next Wednesday. The topic will be all for nothing. I can't wait to actually engage into that context because that kind of came from this topic, but I really want to explore that all for nothing mentality that we sometimes have. Other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed the Wednesday Word. As always, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. I'm happy to engage with you in the content or in the comments for the first week that the content has been released. And then after that, I move on to the next thing. So you just have to catch the next Wednesday Word live and we'll jump from that way. But until the next time that I catch you guys, one love, peace, and God bless. Thank you for sitting on the first row.